not be able to see a horizontal plane.
What a horrible experience.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Dream Podcast, episode 24. This is your host, Lee, and we always have...
Casey Lucid. How's it going, everyone?
I hope everyone's doing fine. So we're going to do another episode on consciousness. So the last episode of the consciousness was pretty popular, so we're going to try to do another one and bring more ideas to the table. But Casey, let's recap some of the ideas that we had on the last episode of consciousness.
Okay, well, so we went over, the different states of consciousness, brain waves, and I guess how consciousness functions depending on the type of brain waves that one is emitting at any given time. We talked about how dreams and their relationship to consciousness and awareness and self-awareness and what it means to be conscious. And we kind of looked a little bit from the scientific side, also very philosophical as far as what we went over. And I mean, it's such a vast topic, but that's mostly what we went over last time. Yeah.
So I don't even know if we got the idea of what consciousness is after all that, right?
I don't think anyone knows.
Yeah, so it's a pretty kind of a hard subject to really explain about, since even modern science has a trouble explaining what it is.
Yeah.
Right? I've kind of tried to research more about it and see what we could find, and a lot of the stuff I found is more from a yogic, ancient India kind of deal.
Cool.
Traditional idea. Let's start with the question, what is consciousness, right?
I mean, at the very basic level, I guess I would describe it as awareness.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to explain it. So from, I guess, yogis from thousands of years ago, right? As early as 700 BC. So these yogis, they found out that they pretty much describe consciousness as the foundation of reality.
Nice, I like that.
And the foundation of reality is experience. And not only that, but the external world is false.
Okay, so that kind of makes me think of, I remember that one of the things that we talked about on the last consciousness episode was how Alan Moore had, the author of The Watchmen, had this quote where it's our internal reality and our external reality are different. One is not necessarily better, but they're equally important or something like that. Yeah. That's what that just reminded me of.
Yeah, exactly. So that's also a pretty good way to explain it. And since consciousness creates reality, the act of observation makes it real.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Question. So these yogis, they talk about how this is, did you say this reality is an illusion? Is that what they called it?
Yeah, the external world is false.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little on that?
Sure. So we have sense organs, right? We can see, we can taste, we can feel, we can touch, right?
Yes.
So these are our sense organs. The thing is, these, whatever we experience or feel through our touch, smell, see, they can be falsified, right? Through means of hallucinogens, drugs, a different state. Well, not so much dreams.
Okay.
We're going to get to that.
Okay, cool.
But things we can touch still, they can be false, right?
Yeah.
Meaning you can be tricked into thinking they can be something else.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of what was it? The fake fruit that people put out on displays.
Yeah, so you see that and you think it's real. It might be real.
Yeah.
There's also even when people go through chemotherapy and such, or a hard, medical procedure, their taste buds change and they don't really taste anymore. Okay. Or you might get sick and your taste bud, you don't taste certain things. Mm. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's basically, you're saying that it's basically just sensory input, which it's kind of like if you're in a sensory deprivation tank, for example, you still exist. It's just you don't have any sensory input. So, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Also, there's a book called Case Against Reality. I just kind of skimmed through the synopsis and the basic idea.
Okay.
It's called The Case Against Reality by Dan Hoffman. There's certain ideas people may or may not agree with, but it really argues that the real world is nothing like the one we experience through our sense, right?
Okay.
And so looking upon this, I was like, what does he mean? There's actually some scientific research or I guess experiments
Okay.
that made kittens not be able to see a horizontal plane.
Huh.
So they put these kittens in a drum when they're like several weeks old,
Okay.
up to like 52 weeks, and they kind of tilted it and rotated the drum around while these kittens are like, moving around and trying to see and figure out. And when they grow up, they literally don't register like horizontal kind of planes, which is freaky.
What a horrible experiment.
Yeah, I know, right? But that brings, scientific evidence. Not only that, but they experiment on ferrets as well.
Okay.
Through some like neural redirection, they're able to hear through their nose instead of their ears.
Whoa.
It's wacky.
Yeah. What?
Right? So this really brings the idea that, hey, we can't really trust our senses, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But what we can do is feel and be aware of whatever it is and make that our reality. Observe what is real and make that our reality and experience it through that, right?
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of, I don't know why, but what you're saying immediately makes me think of Stoicism, where it's like, things around you are always changing, for the worse or the better, but it's up to you to handle yourself, because self-control is really the only type of control.
Yes.
Everything else is kind of false.
Yeah. So if whatever we observe is real, what about dreams?
Yeah, that's the freaky thing, man. Like, that's why I always ask people, it's like, how can you just write off dreams like they're nothing, even though the experience in dreams can be equally as real as right now, us talking?
Exactly. And that's exactly what the yogis thought as well. They thought that whatever experience that you dream is the same as reality. Because if you think about what's the contents of a dream, what is there?
Everything.
Everything, right? What can you feel in a dream?
Everything.
Everything. Yeah. And even more so, like you can do anything, right? In a dream, you can feel suffering, you can feel joy, you can feel hope.
Yeah.
You can feel sorrow, you can feel terror, terrified for your life in a nightmare. Like, and you experienced it. They're not fake.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
You know what though? It made me think of, so, okay, you can experience absolutely anything in a dream, just like in real life, you can experience a lot of stuff. But so then you can become lucid and you can control your dream. And then it made me think of, I had gotten into an argument with someone at work not too long ago. This was actually this week. And I remember thinking like they kept getting angrier and angrier. And in my mind, like I started to get angry too, but then I stopped myself. I kind of did that meditation thing you told me about. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is silly. Why am I even this is my job, I'm going to do my job regardless. And there's no reason to be that attached. And then like the other person just went off the handle. Like they perpetually just kind of like wound themselves up. And I just kind of stood back and like watched them. And I noticed that the more I stayed very calm and the more animated they got, the calmer I stayed. It's very interesting to see how that can affect people.
Yeah, and you not only did you observe them, but you observe yourself observing them, which is a weird concept.
Yeah.
Very good on your practice. Like it's working.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Strange.
So we can even there's certain overlaps with this idea from the yogis and quantum mechanics, right?
Okay.
So this can be very debatable, but quantum mechanics say that reality exists as a probability, that it's not static.
Okay.
It's the act of observation that causes reality to collapse into a reality. And the world exists as a probability waveform when you observe it, and it becomes a reality.
Yeah, so that's like really advanced stuff, but it's I think, what was it, the double slit experiment? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, right?
Yeah, I remember like watching that experiment so many times, and I'm like, I can't
do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember how they did it?
Yeah, basically, what is it? They shot particles through a slit, and then
they shot a photon.
And if somebody observed it, if there was a person watching it, it behaved differently than if they weren't watching it. Yeah.
So if you were to observe it, a pattern shows through on the other side.
Yeah.
But if you observe the photon, wait, what did I just say?
If you record it and don't observe it, it's different.
You record it and don't observe it, and you don't. Yeah. If not looking through the slit will show an interference pattern, and if you look through the slit, it'll show a different pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever part you're conscious of, that part is real.
Yeah, I mean, that's so crazy to think about. Like, there's this, I forget the name of the doctor. I have it here. It's one of the books that I have on consciousness, but it's basically this doctor did an experiment where they took like newborn chicks, like they were just about to hatch, and they put this robot in a football field, and the robot was programmed to just randomly turn 50-50 to the right or the left. So, and it would go around the football field. So it was just very random in the pattern that it would go in. And then the little chicks, once they hatched, usually what happens is the first thing that they see moving, they kind of like affix to that and they think it's their mother. So what they did was they kept them at one end of the football field looking at the robot. So they constantly paid attention to the robot because they thought it was their mother. And then what happened was the robot actually started the majority of the time moving along only in the half of the field where the chicks were. So they changed absolutely nothing except the chicks had hatched. So the idea was that there was some kind of a sentient attention on the robot, which affected its behavior, which is really bizarre to think about. God, I gotta look up what was the name.
And the robot wasn't programmed any other way, right?
No, it was just the exact same thing. They just let the robot run.
Yeah.
And then it changed its behavior based on the fact that there were sentient beings observing it.
No, that's so weird.
Yeah, I remember reading through that like 5 different times, and I'm like, wait, what?
I don't know how that would make sense. That's so weird.
Yeah.
But I guess this kind of helps get into the next point, which is like, so in Sanskrit, there's 2 words for reality, right? That encompasses reality, right?
Okay.
So the first word is Maya, which means illusion. And the second word is Leela, which means play.
Huh.
So pretty much both of these imply a falseness in the universe.
Yeah. Okay.
It's this kind of a weird idea. But since everything is kind of a Maya, an illusion, that you can essentially do anything. And also Leela, you can play and experience anything. For example, like dreams. Dreams is a great example, right?
Okay.
Even though it's not something tangible or physical, you can still experience it in this kind of realm, and you can also play in it.
Yeah. I would argue that even though this reality right now, it feels very real, we all kind of forget that this is something that I've always had a difficulty understanding, like the concept of ownership. I always joke around with my fiance. I'm like, we don't own anything, like not even the body that we're in. It's just like we're just borrowing it for a little bit of time. So it's kind of like, I would argue that this reality is also very like transient, like just...
Yeah. So the idea is also that you can enjoy this illusion, this reality, whatever you make of your consciousness can be enjoyed as an illusion, right?
Yeah.
So if you're happy or content, there's no problem where you can't exist in a world that isn't real. In dreams, in video games, books.
Yeah. You
can have an experience machine. That's a thing.
Yeah. No, that's actually... I know people that like spend a lot of time watching TV, and and my fiance, she has to remind me that, like I shouldn't judge people, because I personally, like, I'm not a big fan of TV, but it's also like, I also enjoy some things, like I've watched TV where I'm like, oh, wow, this is really like incredible. So it's kind of like, it's an illusion, and I'm aware that it's an illusion. That doesn't mean that I can't enjoy it, at least sometimes.
Exactly. And you don't even need to know how, things work to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You just do.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where like the Leela parts comes in.
Okay.
For this kind of meeting.
Okay. That also reminds me of how Alan Watts, I'll probably bring him up a bunch in this conversation, but he has a great talk about how it's like existing. It's kind of like a play, and we all have a role to play, and and it's kind of like the whole secret is to go with it, like to be a good actor. It's kind of like if you see someone that's like really good at their job, it's almost like they make it into an art form. It's like they're really, like you see like a good musician, it's like they're not worried about playing the notes properly. They're just like really into it. Kind of, I think we talked about this on the last consciousness episode about the flow. Like you just go with the flow.
Yeah. So there's times when the illusion is too much and the flow isn't there. For example, like certain times when you're feeling too anxious or depressed, the illusion is too real. You can't play in that kind of state.
Yeah.
And, those certain feelings will actually hijack you and spin things and make things more an illusion than they are. And that's when you kind of, experience suffering or, a lot of negative things.
Yeah.
So it works both ways.
Yeah, man. Like, I got to tell you, like, because I love drawing. Like, I love art, visual art specifically. It's like if I'm having difficulty drawing something, or like if I have to draw something for a commission, or like something that is not really like where I'm not having fun doing it, it never comes out looking as good as I want it to. Like it just never fails.
Yeah. Especially as an artist, I think that's like the what do you call it? Like the bane of an artist? Like
yeah.
Artist soul or something?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But yeah.
You're always your own worst critic. Right? That's what they always say?
That too. Yeah.
It's rough.
But when you get into that state though, where it's like you want to do it and it's great, I would argue that it's similar to like, being in love. It's like I really love my fiance, for example, and I'm very happy to be with her. And it's like, it's great when you're with someone that you actually love, like, I think that's why there's so much entertainment, and like, that's why everyone's always like singing and writing, and, like art is just fully enveloped with love. And it's like, I think it's people idolize love so much because it's almost like being in the flow state with another being, I would say.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Thanks. I just came up with it on the spot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was in the flow zone.
Very nice. Yeah. So speaking of being in states, right? So now we kind of go into the next point where we have states similar to the last episode of consciousness. We have states of being, of awakeness or unconscious, right?
Yeah.
Actually, can you explain what the flow state is?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I would say like the best way to explain it is, for example, like let's say if somebody that knows how to play an instrument like the guitar, and it's like whenever you start playing it, it's like you're really like just forcing it. Like you can't play it right. Like you're really pressing down too hard. Or the piano, it's like if you like you see a good piano player, they don't force it at all. It's like they're just like tapping the keys and it's like flowing. It's basically it's like the best way to describe it, really. Same with like a good athlete, like if you watch LeBron James play basketball, it's like art, like it's just like it just works somehow. There's no friction there. Or like Bruce Lee, if you watch Bruce Lee fighting, not any the choreographed movies or anything, if you find any footage of him like practicing and fighting and like working on the heavy bag, it just flows. Like you can tell that there's no restraint there. It's just everything just works. That's how I would explain it. Yeah,
that's very good. And typically people think of flow state as a kind of a point in life where they want to get to.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the negative things in life. They just want to be able to just do things and be there. As you said, be in the flow and just get things done, do all their daily lives, accomplish their goals. And they believe that this flow state will help them get there, which may be true. But the point is getting there. And another way to describe flow state is like when you're just being, right?
Yeah.
You're just doing.
Yeah.
There's no trying. There's really no really trying to grind it out. You're just being there and you're just doing it. Like LeBron just doesn't try to dunk. He just really just runs up and dunks regardless of who's in his way, right?
Yeah, I mean, like he's gotten to that point where he can do that, but it's like it's kind of like I wouldn't say that it's necessarily about getting there. It's kind of like Alan Watts again has a good talk on the topic where it's like it's not about getting somewhere. It's like if you listen to Mozart or Beethoven, it's not necessarily about getting somewhere, because if that was the case, then every symphony would be like a second long, like everything would just be like.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not saying getting there is the point. well, maybe I said that, but I'm saying typically, for us regular people, that's kind of the idea we want.
You mean the idea is to be able to get into that state? When you say like
yes.
getting there is like getting into the state. Yeah.
Getting to the state.
Yeah, because honestly, it's like, man, I feel like our daily lives, we're just bombarded with so much unnecessary shit. It's like,
yeah,
I just, that's why I idolize that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, because they completely, like, they just elaborate so well on the concept of all the unnecessary shit that the modern civilized person has, which is completely obstructing your ability to think freely.
The yogis had this idea of like, there's all that unnecessary crap, and then there's your consciousness. All the unnecessary things happen within your mind. Within your consciousness, you're just being, right? Just as you're being in the flow state.
Yeah.
For the sake of this point, this is how we can explain meditation. Meditation, you get to a point with a state of, it's a state of mind where there's no thoughts or perception of time.
Yeah.
That is when you are your most basic version of yourself, or you're feeling your own consciousness. And the practice of meditating is to step outside of the mind, step away from all of that unnecessary crap in their daily life.
Okay.
And just exist in a conscious state without the activity of the mind.
Yeah. Okay. But that's like, I've meditated a lot, especially in the past 3 years. I've really like tried to get more into meditating, and I've only maybe out of hundreds of sessions of meditating and, trying to get to that state, I've only probably reached that point like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, no one said it was easy.
Yeah, that is like a hard thing to do. It's almost like an addiction, man. It's almost like trying to break an addiction. It is so hard.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that our minds have picked up during the day, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the yogi saw your mind as like a limb of the consciousness, right?
Okay.
And after that becomes the body.
Okay.
For them, there's this saying for yoga. They said that yoga is the practice of cessation of fluctuations in the mind.
Okay. So it's like you're trying to gain balance, is what it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much. And so...
like fasting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like fasting. And the idea is that your body and your mind are separate from your consciousness, and the mind and body are separate from each other as well.
Okay.
So when you do these yoga poses and you breathe, there's certain things that are going on in your body that allows you to achieve more peace in your mind and stay away from all the real life BS that's happening that your mind picks up during the day.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
So while you're calming yourself, with yoga, you enter kind of a meditative state. So meditation when you are meditating, it's a state of mind with no thoughts or time perception. And this is pretty much the most basic version of yourself. You're basically your consciousness.
Okay. Well, so yeah, that makes sense. That reminds me of, because I know there's been times where I've meditated, and it felt like a minute, but it's like half an hour. And
Yep.
There's also been times where I would meditate for like an hour, but it only felt like 5 minutes. So it's just weird.
Yeah, it's weird. So, even for humans, time is like construct, and when you're meditating, you're just there.
So, meditating in a way, it kind of reminds me of getting into the flow state. Like if you're doing something like doing art or playing music, and you kind of like, you're not fighting it, and you kind of just get into it, and it's like, it just flows, and it sounds good, and it works, and you're not fighting it. That's kind of like what meditation, and I've heard a lot of artists too say that they feel like they get into that state whenever they're doing art, whatever it may be. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Yeah. So I think this will bring us to like the states of consciousness and unconsciousness. So, and now that we've established that there's certain activities with mind and without mind. So if you look at it like a 2x2 like grid, being conscious with the mind active is when you're awake. And if you're unconscious and when you're without mind, you're just sleeping. And if you're unconscious with your mind active, you're dreaming.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Or daydreaming. intuitively we just call it daydreaming because we're not there. We're in our mind somewhere else, right? Like we call it daydreaming. Like, and at the same time, being conscious with the mind, even though you're awake, you could also be lucid dreaming, which when both states are active.
Yeah, that's the freaky thing. That is the really freaky thing.
Yeah, so being awake and lucid dreaming are in the same kind of state, which is really cool, and it makes perfect sense. There's being conscious without the mind, and that is meditating.
Okay. Oh, it kind of clicked. It kind of clicked what you just said. I remember earlier you said that yogis see the mind as an extension of consciousness, kind of like a limb of consciousness.
Yes.
That it doesn't always have to be active, but consciousness is always there.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you're bogged down, everything is going on in your mind, not your consciousness.
Huh. You know what that reminds me of? Have you ever read the book Into the Magic Shop?
No.
Really, really cool book. Highly recommended read. It talks about a kid that grew up in extreme poverty in America. Mm-hmm. I forget what state. And this old lady teaches him basically how to meditate. She doesn't tell him that it's meditating, but basically she teaches him how to relax and calm down and focus. And eventually the kid grows up to be, and this is a real story, by the way. This is like the kid grows up to be a neurosurgeon,
amazing,
like a multi-million successful practice. Like it's a really like inspiring story. And that's basically what she taught him, is to be conscious. And it's such a subtle thing, but it can have such incredible. It
is super subtle.
Yeah. Yeah, but it can have...
And what's even more subtle... Oh, yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say it can have incredible implications, even though it's subtle.
Oh, absolutely. Once you kind of realize that things are going on in your mind and that you can just recognize it and not feel, not be one with the negative emotions that are bogging you down, you can do anything.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And what's even more subtle is like, when I say mind, I don't even mean the brain. The brain has like physical functions for your body, right? Like the amygdala, the hippocampus, they all have a particular functions, right?
Right.
So the mind is like the sensations and perceptions and sensory experiences.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that the mind is kind of like the software and the brain is the hardware? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what would the consciousness be?
Electricity.
Yeah, a source of power. It can be seen that way, yeah. All right, I'll take it. I guess really quick. So, now that we've kind of established all this, so I guess since this is a dreaming podcast, why do we dream considering all of this?
I guess I would say, why do we dream? In the terms that you defined it would kind of be like, because our mind is active. Does that sound like an okay?
Yeah. At the very base of it is because our mind is active, right? So if we look at, dream theory by Freud, do you know what he says?
No idea.
So he pretty much says regarding dreams, they're kind of like unconscious wishes that people find unacceptable in real life. And the dreams are representations of these wishes. These wishes have become, sort of part of the unconscious mind.
Huh.
And I think that makes sense to an extent.
To an extent.
To an extent, right? So I don't think it's complete, right?
Yeah.
Or it might even be half correct, whichever.
Yeah.
Along with like the kind of yogic perspective or the Ayurveda perspective, like they have the term satna for dreams.
Okay.
And the literal meaning is like the literal translation means decrease of touch or even ignorance, right? And they kind of form a relationship between like dreaming and the waking life. And not only are they kind of physiological kind of happenings, they also like a pathological condition within your body and mind.
Huh.
And not only that, but these things affect your mind. There are multiple facets of your own body and mind, which will be affected by your dreams, which include, your visual, auditory perceptions, your desires and future outcomes, and your own well-being that will affect your dreams.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
That's so interesting that they thought of it as pathological. Huh. I guess, it can be. Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I think it's amazing what these kind of yogis like found out like thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine that was visiting recently, and who's an anthropology major, and we just got talking, and I'm like, I don't think we're that much more advanced than like the ancient Greeks. I mean, our technology is advanced for sure.
Yeah.
But we're still pretty much the same people. Like, I wouldn't, like, just because we have better technology doesn't, like, people are people.
Yeah. And, you know, in my experience, like, they made yoga, they made meditation, or, well, they, you know, refined meditation. And then we're still doing that to this day, or the people that do practice it. And I personally have seen results.
Same.
And I think it's great.
Yeah.
And these are things that we've done for thousands of years, and they still work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, until we all become like cyborgs with chips implanted in our heads.
Oh man.
Then,
until we start dating AI.
Yeah. Then we could just download the what is it? The Enlightenment patch or whatever. Like, oh,
Enlightenment patch.
Yeah. 3.0.
Oh man. I feel like if we get to that point, dreams will be gone.
Oh man, that would be a shame.
That would be a damn shame.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree. It's like I can't speak enough for the importance of meditating and learning to control one's mind, because it can definitely get away from you.
Yeah, and I believe like meditation will also help your lucid experience as well.
For sure, yes. And then if you really want to get deep into it, start meditating while lucid dreaming. That's like a whole nother level. Things get interesting, but but we're like close to out of time here on the podcast. Maybe we'll go over that in another podcast.
You know, hopefully you've liked what we've said so far, and if you like what we said, you know, give us a follow and share this episode with people you like, and hopefully you've learned a lot.
As always, we love hearing your guys' dream stories. We've had a lot of positive feedback from our listeners, so if you have any dreams you want to share, or any lucid dream stories, those are also interesting. Feel free to let us know at contact@letsdreampodcast.com, or just in the comments of the podcast, or on Instagram, Let's Dream Podcast. Whatever is comfortable for you guys, but thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.